And we're joined this evening in the studio by the four wise men, as Tony Mepham has described them: Johnny Palmer, Steve Burns, Gareth Jones and Dave Faragher. And first of all, because we're discussing Manx football in general tonight, if you've got any thoughts, any questions you'd like to ask these wise men, then please do get in touch. You can text 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com. But let's start with the guru, the godfather, Steve Burns, a man I played under a long, long time ago. And an open-ended question, really, to start with. But is Manx football in a healthy state?
I think it's a mixed bag, really. We've discussed already the issues that we have with fulfilling fixtures, which is disappointment. But I think what's really pleased me this year, because I've been concerned, and this is something I talked to Tony about in recent years, is the quality of youth players coming through. Because we went through, if you think about the under-18s team, the dream team that got to the semi-final of the FA County Youth Cup in 2008-2009, that was a fantastic team. We took 3 players straight from that squad straight into the Ireland senior team for the Island Games in Gotland later that year. And we've not really been in a position where we've been able to do that since. But I think this year is the closest we've come. Been really pleased with how the 18s have done. Obviously, they got to the quarterfinals of the County Youth Cup. And the good thing about that is that they were so young that we only lose 3 players from that squad. So we're going to have them again for another year. And I think one of the main reasons is now that I think managers and coaches, and it might be because there's a lot of dropout amongst players, but they are now starting to give the kids a chance at first team, at combi level, whereas I think in recent years not a lot of kids have been given first team or senior football once they turn 16, and they've had to rely on under-18s football. But actually going and playing in a more physical, faster, tactical, technically better games, I think that is helping produce better players. And I believe, from what I've not seen this, I can't speak, I've not seen the players myself, but I believe what we've got coming up from under 15 and under 16s are just as good, if not better. So I think in that sense, it seems to be quite healthy. I think the big challenge is keeping them interested. I look at it as a coach and a manager. I want players, I want good players. And it's been a concern of mine that people have been dropping out. And it might be one of the reasons why some clubs struggle. I don't know. This is just outside looking in. It might be one of the reasons why clubs have to call games off, because they haven't got enough players at certain times.
But you want good players, I suppose, of the same ilk as Johnny Palmer. Johnny, how has the game on the Isle of Man changed since you first started playing? And let's talk standard as well. Do you feel that the standard has improved? Has it stayed the same, or has it stagnated somewhat?
I think it's probably stagnated, to be fair. I think the top 1% of players will always come through, the island players, the superstars. I think it might be the other 99% that probably suffer, maybe. I mean, certainly the problems that we have at the moment through lack of fulfilment of fixtures or whatever it is, there may be factors involved with a certain lack of meaningful fixtures, in the respect that St George's have become so dominant that everybody else is fighting for scraps, and then you get to halfway and the top 4 have been decided. At that point, I would say you've probably got 3 teams that will win the league or could possibly win the league. You've got 3 teams at the bottom end that will fight out the relegation spots, and then everyone else in the middle, what would be left, 7 teams, really have 12 fixtures that there's not an awful lot on, which makes teams like you've called there, Old Boys, it's an easy fix for them. I would just call the game off because there's nothing on the fixture. Whereas I think if you maybe tried something new, a new thing like putting the Railway Cup to the end of the season, you might get more meaningful games. You might have Laxey, for instance. Laxey have had 12 meaningless fixtures since Christmas. Well, maybe not since Christmas, but we've had 12 meaningless fixtures, and then we've had players that I can't really be bothered now because there's nothing on the game.
Surely there is an onus, though, on the managers and the coaches to keep those players enthused and determined to succeed. It might be a meaningless fixture in terms of you can't win the league. The top four may even be out of reach, but you want to win every match, though. Surely,
absolutely.
And you've got to drill that into your players. And,
I think it's got to be an onus on the players as well, though, Chris. It can't all be down to managers and coaches. The players have got to want the desire and determination, no matter what is riding on any game.
It's very difficult though if you training. We train Monday, Thursdays, and you have 4 weeks of no fixtures. That's when it becomes very difficult to keep the motivation. It's easier when you're playing week in, week out.
I mean, sorry, Gareth, but if Old Boys were in 5th place and could still qualify for the Railway Cup at the end of the season, would they be calling that fixture off tomorrow?
If I was involved with Old Boys, I'd be wanting them to finish as high as possible in the league.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're going to win tomorrow against St George's. I just wonder, just surmising here, if that game was against St Mary's or St John's or Corinthians or Russian, would they have had a team out because there's more of a chance of points? Because certainly, I've had this argument with you many a time, John. My thing is, certainly with Corinthians, it's only the last couple of years it's happened for them. They want to finish as high as they can, and they want to beat whoever's in front of them. That's the mentality of them, and I think quite a few clubs are like that, but some clubs now just give up. I don't know what you think, Fags, because you've followed this for a long time.
Yeah, I think the FA have made it too easy this year by just awarding walkovers. Clubs are taking the easy option of not turning up. Some clubs are not playing combination games now for fun. They can field a team when they want, but league games they're just not bothered anymore. And I think it's because they know they don't have to play it at the end of the season, and that's because they've just been given a walkover.
Can I just leap to the defence of Old Boys here? Because is it beyond the realms of possibility that several of the players are doing something, that they have prior engagements, they can't field a team, and it would be wrong of them really to field a team of inexperienced young players from the combination who would just get an absolute pasting by St George's, not do their confidence any good. So really the best thing for them to do would be to call the game off.
They've just played in the Junior Cup final, so they've got a strong combination team. They've got 9 players away evidently, but it's bizarre that you're playing your combination and not playing your first team, because to me all combination players, and Johnny's combination manager, should be striving to get in the first team. Here you've got the opportunity to give those players a chance to play against the best team on the island, and that's been taken away from them. I'm not knocking Old Boys, I'm just thinking that it's strange that they'll play the combination game but they won't play against...
I certainly don't think this is Old Boys bashing, because by any stretch of the imagination they're not the worst. You see every week teams pulling out of games here, there and everywhere. I just do think that if there was a little bit more on it, if there was the carrot on the stick at the end of it, that there might be players who would be willing to turn around and go, listen, I can't do that because I'm playing football on Saturday. You're right in the respect that it's the easy way out, but I just think that if we had more meaningful games during the season, i.e. putting the Railway Cup at the end and having the last 4, then everyone plays to the end of the season. Be that at the end of March when it should be, or be that now at the end of, or the middle of May when it is. It doesn't matter, because you're still playing meaningful games. Even if you're in 6th and you've got 5 games to go, you still have something to play for. But we don't. We haven't had anything to play for months. And Old Boys will be the same in the first team, and St John's will be the same. I just wonder whether the FA might think about putting the Railway Cup at the end of the season like they do with the Paul Henry. Because look at the top of the 2nd division. You've only just decided who's made it. The 2nd division has been brilliant.
But this year's not an ideal one to look at, Johnny, because if you look about February, Laxey's first team had only played 11. Mm-hmm. So you did have something to play for, because you were still in the hunt for the Railway Cup up until about 4 weeks ago. Yeah, so you still had something to go for. But my thing is, I go the other way then. All the cup finals finish off at the end of the season. Then you've got the FA Cup, which is usually Easter, mid-April, if it depends where it lands. Then you've got the Hospital Cup. Then you've got the Railway Cup. You need to break it up, so the Railway Cup's good at the halfway stage, and it's good for Christmas, I think.
Well, I would put the Hospital Cup at the start of the season.
I just want to hear from Gareth Jones here. Is it all doom and gloom? We've heard a lot of moaning and whinging so far, it seems, but this is the most competitive it's been in a long, long time.
You have to be careful of the old when-I scenario when things were better as such. I think clubs are more organised in the sense of structure. Pitches are 100% better. I think they're organised, the clubs, a little bit more solidly than perhaps years ago. Playing standards, I find watching football very difficult. That's why I went to be a referee, to be honest, when I stopped playing. I'm not a good watcher of football even now. But the top level is certainly, as Johnny said, St George's have been a very good team and there's some very good players. There are some coming this year, there's been a sign of their dominance, and all the teams that dominate, people want to get rid of them basically, because Peel did it, Russian did it, and they've been there from a football point of view too long. But whose fault's that? It's not theirs.
And we get into dangerous territory, don't we, if we, as a footballing body, start to look at ways to stop St George's from dominating. It's not their fault they're the best team in the league and that they go about it things the right way and have dominated for so long.
I think it's everybody else's fault that they're dominating, because they train more than anyone else. They train 3 times a week. You try to get someone train 3 times a week.
So how do you change the mentality of all the players who are playing football in the Isle of Man? Because some of them will play it purely for fun. Some of them won't really mind about winning or losing. They play for exercise, but there are players out there who do have a desire to win.
Well, that's the key. Surely
you have to attract them to a different club and sell them the project and say, we want to build something special here. We want to quote Sir Alex Ferguson, knock St George's off their perch. That surely has to be the aim of every other club in the top flight at the moment.
I think you've seen that though this year, haven't you? You've seen 4 clubs going for the league this year, and as Tony said before, here we are, St George's only crowned with a game to spare. It's been I think there's only been one instance of that in the last. Well, we won it at Russian in 2010. And Peel pushed them close, I think, was it 2 years ago? Yeah. And that went to the last game. But in the other times, Geordies have just run away with it. I think they ran away with it last season. But this year, I think it's got to be big kudos to Peel, Corinthians and Russian, because they pushed St George's this year. And I know the St George's lads well. I know Bassi and Dicko, they love the challenge as well. They don't get any, they don't get any great pleasure out of walkover. It means a lot more for them to have won a competitive league than it will an uncompetitive league. So I was, I don't think you say we were whinging. We've talked about some positive points, good young players coming through, and we've had a very competitive First Division this year. Premier League this year. So it's not all doom and gloom. I think it's on the right. There's a lot of things that can make it better, but that's life. We can always make things better. But I think it's been a good season, especially at the top. Although I do take Johnny's point, and I'll go back to one of my old stumping points. Mep's going to throw things at me here. 3 leagues.
Well, and when it comes to considering the structure of the league and the way football is played over here, I mean, it's going to take a massive overhaul, a lot of input from just about every single club to see if they would be willing to have a 3-league system. Are there any plans in the pipeline, Tony, or have you looked at the blueprints and feel it's just simply not feasible?
I've got a blueprint and I set it all out with the 3 leagues. That's fine. The way I look at it, the decision to go 3 leagues will be made by the clubs. It was quite a few years ago. Dave might remember. I think it was about 10 years ago. A club put it forward. It was Jim's, and there's 27 clubs in the league then, and the vote was 26-1 against. Yes, we've moved on. My next question to Burnsy would be, would you like to see the opportunity of an Island team playing in the FA Vars, or possibly going as a team into Step 6 to play league football in Step 6? I think that's the next thing that we need. If we do that, we have to go a League of 14 in the Premier League. So 3 leagues won't work. So what do we do? Do we give the opportunity to maybe play in the Vars if we can find a loophole, go Step 7 football, and give the opportunity for a club like St George's to then go into Step 6? We can't do that as 3 leagues, so that's where the difficulty is.
I think, to be honest with you, if we don't do something, we're going to end up with 3 leagues. But the 3 leagues that we're going to end up with is the First Division in the state it is now, the Second Division in the state it is now, and a combi league. Because the players, through lack of interest or through whatever it is, Maloo don't have a combi, was it last year? Ayr didn't have one last year. St George's are pulling out of fixtures, Old Boys are pulling out of fixtures, Laxey are pulling out of fixtures, Peel are pulling out of fixtures. So that's telling you that the numbers in the combi league aren't there to sustain 26 or 20, however many clubs there are, 24, 26 clubs in its state now. So unless we actually do something, I think we're going to end up with 3 leagues, and there'll only be one combi league.
What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I've noticed this year, I've been to quite a few combi games, and Russian have been winning 10, 11-0. I don't see the point of it. They need, not just because Russian this year, but Russian old boys need stronger opposition to play against. And whether you go to 3 leagues, I don't know. But there does seem to be a lack of players for all the clubs, because I look at some of the fixture sheets, and quite often clubs have just got 11 players, no subs. And we've struggled a couple of games just to get 11 players. So,
and you've won the league?
We've won the league, yeah. So
we got the semi-final of the Junior Cup, and I had 10 men for the first game, 11 men for the second game, and 12 men for the third game. And the third game was a semi-final. And we had 12 players who'd play. There's your problem.
Gareth Jones, what's your assessment of the situation?
Well, I'd like to just diverse slightly if I can. I'd like to look at referees. I think the players have got to remember you can't play without a referee. And I feel, having watched a fair bit this last couple of years, some of the attitudes towards the referees are becoming a little bit over the top. It's a football game, everybody has an opinion, you can query a decision, but I think some of the vitriol and perhaps some of the social media, that I don't do social media at all, but I'm led to believe it does happen, and without a ref you can't play. Doesn't matter how many players you got, you can have 20, 30 players wanting to play, but without the ref, and they're honest blokes who are trying to do a day's job, give what they see. They have good days, they have bad days, just as the players do. But I'd like to see a little bit of improvement towards the referees.
I mean, that's an issue we have touched upon before, and it's a very difficult one because, as you say, everybody does have an opinion in a high, intense atmosphere, a competitive environment like a football pitch. People do want the decisions to go their way, and it's sometimes just a natural reaction to oppose a decision which you feel has been harshly given against you or not been awarded to you. But I take your point. Referees are often seen as easy target men, and you made the point there. Referees may not always have the best game, but nor do the players, and there's not a crowd of referees around a player telling him he should have put the ball in the back of the net when he's missed from 6 yards out. It's a difficult one.
And when the whistle goes, though, it should be in. That's when it finishes. Shake hands, all's done and dusted, just like players. You might have, the old days, kicked lumps out of each other, but you shook hands, got on with it, had a beer after the game. That should be the end of the game, sort of thing. You can discuss it, talk about it, but not go for vitriol or be abusive, and people in the FA have been getting that, and I think that's totally out of order.
Tony, is the Respect campaign in full flow, in full function here in the Isle of Man, or has it waned somewhat?
It's there, but it's up to everyone to carry it out. Certainly the last couple of games that I've watched as a spectator, which was the Junior Cup final, and then I watched the big game Corinthians against St George's, I'm hearing things from spectators and from club people that I don't want to be party of, and I moved away from the stand on Tuesday when the verbals were coming from the side of the pitch, and I just thought there's no way, and I went and stood up by the tea hatch, and there's one certain person there I could hear near enough every word clear. That to me is not good for football, and I think it has to stop, because Gareth is 100% right. When you look at the referees at the moment, the age on them is a good age. Your dad was a referee, Chris.
And he's a good age, I may add.
He's a good age.
If he's listening.
And we want to entice these younger people come in. Yes, it's all right, you're Andy Lodgers saying you've got to be thick-skinned, you're James Turpin, yeah, you've got to be thick-skinned. You haven't. Officials have to be treated with respect.
I mean, I get that. It's a very, very difficult situation, but I think if you're going to take up the whistle, criticism does come with it. It's just the nature of the sport, with any sport. But I do agree that I think some of the vitriol, and especially on social media, if it carries on after the match, referees are only there doing a job. They call the game as they see it. I don't think there's too much
Johnny
malice
would be a good person
involved
to ask, because he used to give the referees hell when he was playing. Go on, Johnny.
I wouldn't be a referee. 25 quid to get slagged off for 90 minutes. Not a chance.
But what do you think? I mean, you just heard Tony say it. Apparently, he used to give the referee a mouthful.
Come on, Johnny.
Never. You must have the wrong player.
Not at all.
They haven't.
You get caught up in the moment, I suppose, on the field.
But I think when you're reffing, though, you don't notice it the same as if you're watching it. You're part of the game. I accept that if somebody kicks you, you get a reaction. If somebody fouls you, and as a ref, you accept that. It's part and parcel. So you're right, there are emotions about it. That's why we play it, isn't it? It's the vitriol. It's the unnecessary taking it beyond that step where it's continued. I didn't mind a player saying something to me immediately after something. But if he was still talking to me 3 minutes, 4 minutes later about it, invariably it led to something that he didn't like. So
what annoys you more? Is it when you get you call a decision as you see it, and there's a very big reaction against that decision from one of the teams, or is it the constant pushing the back ref? Or how many times, ref?
I mean, I was guilty of it, but like Johnny, I didn't keep quiet on a football pitch when I was playing. Appealed for everything. You don't mind the immediacy. You know, somebody appeals, and you go. It's the constant. Or somebody running 40 yards, 50 yards to make a comment when you no need to. Or the fullback saying something to the centre forward from 50 yards. That's unnecessary.
So in your eyes, how do you stamp this out? Are you going to give yellow cards to everybody for dissent?
It's man management, isn't it? If you can talk to them and stop them doing it, you do it. And if you can't, you revert to the rules. Because the rules are there. Yellow cards, red cards. I mean, I've more than likely been sworn at as a ref, and people would say you should send them off.
Never.
Send them off for swearing at you, but it's how it's said, isn't it? It's the way, the emotion of it, or you don't say, ow, oh, that hurt when you get kicked or something, or somebody fouls you.
What do you say, Gareth?
I don't know those
I don't
words,
think
Johnny.
that's fit for 6:30 on a Friday evening if we have to wait till after the watershed. But again, taking your point, I don't think dissent is exclusive to football, which is often the case. Footballers get hounded, I think, sometimes for the way they treat referees, and in some cases, yes, it is very bad. But you get dissent in hockey, you get dissent in rugby, not as much, but it is there in the game. But it's something that it's an interesting one to deal with.
Does the green card work though? Isn't green card in hockey where you go off for 10 minutes?
Well, yeah, it was 2 minutes. I mean, I haven't had too many. So I'll be honest, I don't actually know the rules of hockey. I just play it not very well, I may add.
To be fair to Gareth, he was a wonderful referee. He refereed how many games before he became a referee?
Well, Joey Taggart says, and asked was I a good referee. He said he refereed most games when he played.
Yeah. You made more decisions than any referee I ever knew.
I believe that's true.
We've not got long left. It's amazing how quickly half an hour flies by. But I just want to get quickly from each of you the biggest obstacle facing Manx football. As we'll start. Well, there's some vigorous pointing at Tony Mepham there, and some wry smiles in the studio.
To me, the show's about these four guys.
But yeah, let's start with you, Dave. What do you see as the biggest obstacle facing Manx football?
Keeping young players involved. I think this year there's 2 or 3 teams in the 16 to 18.
Ended up 4 and then down to 2, yeah.
Which is quite frightening, really.
Gareth?
Yeah.
The continuity of fixtures, I think, is crucial. I would like to see that become a regular event. You can play one game in November, January, you get a good start, and then suddenly there's 3 months of the year when all sorts of obstacles seem to raise up.
Would you take the trustees bit out and let the referees make the decision if the pitch is playable?
I've always thought that. I think most refs with common sense would talk to the person who's in charge at the ground and come to the decision that was sensible.
Yeah.
I think you were a big opponent of that though, Mep, weren't you?
I was. I've changed because of what I've seen this year. This year's been the worst year ever for, I think, clubs calling games off when pitches are fit, and I got to the stage where, and it's not an ideal time, but getting up before I went to work and go and have a look at some pitches, I'm thinking, I'm not a qualified referee, but I think that's playable. And then you'd find out that the pitch, it's been called off because the pitch was wet, but then the opposition have offered them their pitch, and they said, no, we're not giving up home advantage. That's not right. I think the referee should make the decision, and Gareth's right. A good referee will listen to a grounds. When you look after a grounds, Dave, and if the club have got major concerns because of the condition of it, I think the referee would look at it. What do you think, Steve?
What, on pitches?
Yeah, well, just in general, with the football, with the fixtures, Gareth's saying, with the irregular sort of fixture list, which is, the list is there quite clear, but it's just with Island games on and weather.
Well, without knowing we've been fortunate at Russian, as Gareth alluded to before, we've not really been involved in too many games that have been called off by other clubs. We've been hit by Island games this year, for instance, all four under 18 games impacted on Russian games, because we were due to play teams who had players in the opposition for a Russian on that day. Same with the senior team. Going back to when I played, I don't remember games ever being called off. And you and I played on the side of a hill, and we still played every week in rain, wind or shine.
I'm afraid we are out of time, but thank you very much for the discussion. Dave Faragher, Gareth Jones, Steve Burns, Johnny Palmer and Tony Mepham, as always. Thanks very much for your company. Whatever you're doing this weekend, make sure it's a good one.